Dr. Vincent Cross had not seen sunlight in 47 hours. The fluorescent lights of Laboratory 6 hummed above him as he scribbled equations across 3 separate holographic screens, his fingers moving with mechanical precision. Numbers danced in blue light, forming patterns that would have been beautiful if anyone had been there to see them. But Vincent preferred it this way, alone, focused, pure. The quantum field generator behind him pulsed with a low hum, and he allowed himself a thin smile. 3 more calculations, and he would crack the synchronization problem that had stumped his colleagues for months. Sleep was irrelevant. Food was fuel to be consumed when the body demanded it. Everything else was just noise. The door to the lab hissed open. Vincent didn't look up. "I didn't request an assistant. Good thing I'm not one." The voice was warm, feminine, and entirely too cheerful for 3 in the morning. "I'm Rebecca Torres, the new wellness coordinator. And according to your biometric monitor, you haven't left this lab in 2 days." He finally glanced over. She stood in the doorway wearing casual clothes, a dark blue jacket over a simple shirt, her black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried a tablet and an expression that somehow managed to be both concerned and determined. "Biometric monitors are for people who need supervision," Vincent said flatly, turning back to his work. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own schedule. Your heart rate has been elevated for 6 hours. You've consumed nothing but coffee and energy bars. Your stress hormones are. Stress is a biological response to perceived danger." Vincent interrupted, his tone clipped. "I'm not in danger. I'm working. There's a difference." Rebecca stepped further into the lab, her eyes scanning the chaos of screens and equipment. "Dr. Cross, the Horizon Research Station implemented wellness protocols for a reason. Burnout leads to mistakes. Mistakes in quantum physics can be catastrophic. I don't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when they're exhausted." Vincent set down his stylus with deliberate slowness and turned to face her fully. His pale gray eyes were cold behind his glasses. "Let me save us both some time, Miss Torres. I understand you have a job to do. I respect that. But I don't need meditation sessions or breathing exercises or whatever trendy psychological framework you're selling this month. My mind works best when left alone. So if you'll excuse me, I have actual important work to complete." Rebecca didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled up a chair and sat down, crossing her arms. "That's interesting. Because from what I've read in your file, your best work includes 2 hospitalizations for exhaustion, a reputation for impossible collaboration, and exactly 0 personal relationships outside this facility. That's not a mind working at its best, Dr. Cross. That's a mind running from something." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Vincent's jaw tightened. "You've been here for what, a week? And you think you can psychoanalyze me based on a file?" "I think you're brilliant," Rebecca said calmly. "Everyone here thinks you're brilliant. But brilliance without balance is just another form of destruction. You're not a machine, no matter how much you pretend to be." "Emotions are chemical reactions," Vincent replied coldly. "Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. They're no more meaningful than the reaction happening in that generator behind me. Just because humans have evolved to feel attachment doesn't make it logical or necessary." Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "Then why do you lock yourself in here? If emotions don't matter, why avoid them so completely?" Vincent opened his mouth to respond, then stopped. For a brief moment, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, perhaps, or irritation at being cornered by his own logic. Then his expression hardened again. "This conversation is over. You can file whatever report you need to file. Now please leave my lab." Rebecca stood slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "I'll go, but I'll be back tomorrow. And the day after that. Because whether you believe it or not, Dr. Cross, you're worth more than your equations." She left without waiting for a response. Vincent stared at the closed door for a long moment, his hands clenched into fists. Then he turned back to his screens, trying to focus on the numbers that had always made sense. But for the first time in years, they looked blurry. He told himself it was just fatigue. He almost believed it. The alarm shrieked through Laboratory 6 at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that Vincent would never forget. He had been running a critical test on the quantum field synchronization when the numbers started cascading wrong. The equations that had looked perfect on paper were collapsing in real time. And by the time he realized what was happening, it was already too late. The generator's containment field destabilized in a fraction of a second. Vincent lunged for the emergency shutdown, his fingers reaching for the panel. Then the world turned white. The explosion threw him backward through a wall of glass. Pain erupted everywhere at once, his chest, his face, his hands. Especially his hands. He heard screaming and distantly realized it was his own voice. Then everything went dark. He woke 3 days later in the medical wing. The first thing he noticed was the silence. No hum of machinery. No glow of holographic screens. Just the steady beep of a heart monitor and the whisper of air filtration. The second thing he noticed was that he couldn't move his hands. Don't try to move yet. Rebecca's voice cut through the fog. She was sitting in a chair beside his bed, looking exhausted. The doctors had to do extensive surgery on both your hands. You had third-degree burns and severe nerve damage. Vincent's throat was dry. How bad? She hesitated, and that hesitation told him everything. They saved your hands, but the fine motor control, it's going to take months of therapy, maybe longer. They can't guarantee full recovery. The words hit harder than the explosion had. Vincent stared at the ceiling, his mind racing through the implications. His hands were his tools. Without them, he couldn't write equations, couldn't manipulate instruments, couldn't work. Everything that defined him had been taken away in a single moment of miscalculation. "Get out," he whispered. "Vincent, get out." The shout tore from his chest, sending pain radiating through his broken ribs. "I don't need your pity. I don't need anything from you." Rebecca stood slowly. "I'll come back tomorrow. Don't bother." But she did come back. Every day for 2 weeks she appeared in his room despite his hostility. She brought books he refused to read, talked about research he refused to discuss, and sat in silence when he turned his face to the wall. Vincent hated her presence. He hated that she saw him like this, weak, broken, useless. The physical therapy began in the 3rd week. A cheerful therapist named Marcus tried to guide Vincent through simple exercises, moving fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. Every movement sent shooting pains up his arms. Every failed attempt to grip a stylus felt like another nail in the coffin of his career. "Maybe we should take a break," Marcus suggested after Vincent had thrown a therapy ball across the room in frustration. "Maybe you should find someone who actually wants your help." Vincent snarled. Rebecca appeared in the doorway. "Marcus, could you give us a moment?" The therapist left gratefully. Rebecca closed the door and leaned against it, her arms crossed. She looked different today, tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. There were shadows under her eyes, and her usual composure seemed frayed at the edges. "You done with your tantrum?" she asked quietly. "This isn't a tantrum. This is my life falling apart." "I know something about that." Rebecca moved to the window, staring out at the research station's biodome garden below. "My sister died 2 years ago. Car accident. Left behind a 6-year-old son, my nephew Julian. I became his guardian overnight. Suddenly I was a parent with no preparation, no partner, and a child who woke up screaming every night because he watched his mother die." Vincent's anger faltered. "I didn't know." "Why would you? You never asked about anyone's life but your own." There was no accusation in her tone, just exhaustion. "I was finishing my doctorate when it happened. Had to put everything on hold. Couldn't afford the apartment we had. Moved 3 times in 6 months. Julian stopped talking for almost a year. The therapist said he might never fully recover from the trauma." She turned to face him, and Vincent saw something in her eyes he'd never noticed before. An ocean of pain held back by sheer force of will. "Every single day. I wanted to fall apart," Rebecca continued. "Every day I wanted to scream at the universe for being so unfair. But I couldn't, because Julian needed me to be strong. So I learned something, Dr. Cross. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to keep going when everything in you wants to stop." Vincent felt something crack inside his chest. "I can't write anymore. I can barely hold a cup. Everything I was... It's gone." "No." Rebecca moved closer, her voice firm. "Everything you thought you were is gone. The version of yourself you built to hide from the world. But the real you, the person who's brilliant and stubborn and so terrified of connection that you turned yourself into a machine, that person is still here. And maybe, just maybe, this is your chance to find out who he really is." Tears burned in Vincent's eyes, the first he'd allowed himself since the accident. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be weak." "You're not weak. You're human." Rebecca sat on the edge of his bed. "And being human means accepting help. It means letting people see you when you're broken. It means trusting that you're worth more than what you can produce. I don't know if I believe that. Then believe me when I say it. She reached out slowly and took his bandaged hand in both of hers. You're going to get through this, Vincent. Not alone. Not by pretending you don't need anyone, but with help. With people who care about you, even when you're being impossible. For the first time since the explosion, Vincent didn't pull away. He let himself be seen, truly seen, in all his brokenness and fear. And somehow, with Rebecca's hand steady around his, the world didn't end. It was only the beginning. 3 months after the accident, Vincent stood in front of a whiteboard in the rehabilitation center's common room, a modified stylus strapped to his hand with adaptive braces. His fingers still trembled when he tried to write, but he could hold the marker now. Small victories, Rebecca called them. He was learning to appreciate them. So this is where you've been hiding. Rebecca appeared with 2 cups of coffee, handing him one carefully. She knew he still struggled with grip strength, not hiding, thinking. Vincent gestured at the board covered in equations. I've been working on a new approach to the synchronization problem. If I can't manipulate the instruments myself, maybe I can design a system that doesn't require such precise manual control. Rebecca studied the board with genuine interest. You're adapting the work instead of forcing yourself to go back to the old way. Seemed logical. Vincent took a careful sip of coffee. Someone recently taught me that strength isn't about refusing to change. It's about finding new ways forward. A smile touched Rebecca's lips. That someone sounds wise. She has her moments. They had fallen into an easy rhythm over the past months. Rebecca still conducted her wellness checks, but now Vincent actually participated. He attended the meditation sessions he'd once mocked, discovering that quieting his mind helped with the chronic pain. He joined group therapy for accident survivors, hearing stories that made his own struggles feel less isolating. And slowly, painfully, he was learning to ask for help. The common room door burst open and a small figure rushed in. A boy of about 8 with Rebecca's dark hair and eyes that carried too much understanding for his age. Aunt Becca, you said we could go to the observation deck before dinner. Julian stopped when he saw Vincent, suddenly shy. I did say that, didn't I? Rebecca ruffled his hair affectionately. Julian, you remember Dr. Cross? The one who got hurt in the explosion. Julian studied Vincent with solemn curiosity. Did it hurt a lot? Julian, Rebecca started, but Vincent held up a hand. It's okay. Yes, it hurt a lot. Still does sometimes. My mom died in a car crash, Julian said matter-of-factly. I was there. I don't remember it hurting, just being really scared. Vincent knelt down slowly, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. I was scared too when I got hurt. Being scared doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human. Julian's eyes widened. Aunt Becca says that all the time. Your aunt is usually right. Don't tell her I said that. A genuine smile broke across Julian's face. Can you come to the observation deck with us? Aunt Becca says you can see 3 different nebulas tonight. Vincent glanced at Rebecca, who gave him an encouraging nod. I'd like that. The observation deck was indeed spectacular that evening. The 3 of them stood before the massive viewport, watching distant stars paint the darkness with ancient light. Julian pressed his nose against the glass, pointing out constellations Rebecca had taught him. That's Orion, and that's the Pleiades cluster, and that really bright one is actually Mars. Very good, Vincent said. Do you know how far away those stars are? Really, really far. The nearest star is about 4 light years away. That means the light we're seeing left that star 4 years ago. We're looking at the past. Julian's eyes went huge. Whoa, so when I look at stars, I'm like a time traveler? In a way, yes. Rebecca watched them with something tender in her expression. Later, after Julian had fallen asleep on the transit back to their quarters, she walked with Vincent through the station's quiet corridors. Thank you, she said softly, for being kind to him. He doesn't trust easily anymore. He's a good kid, smart, observant. Vincent paused. You've done an incredible job with him, Rebecca. Raising a child while dealing with your own grief, building a career, and somehow still having the energy to deal with stubborn scientists. It's remarkable. Some days I don't feel remarkable. Some days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. Then you're braver than I ever was. Vincent stopped walking, turning to face her. I spent years convincing myself that isolation was strength, that needing people was weakness. But watching you, seeing how you've built a life around connection and care despite everything you've lost, That's real courage. Rebecca's eyes glistened in the corridor's soft lighting. Vincent, I was the alien, he interrupted, the words spilling out. All those years I thought I was superior because I didn't let emotions control me. But I wasn't superior. I was just afraid. Afraid of being hurt, afraid of losing control, afraid of mattering to someone and having them leave. His voice dropped to a whisper. Afraid of being seen. And now? Now I'm still afraid. But I'm learning that being afraid and doing it anyway, that's what makes us human. He reached out tentatively, and Rebecca took his hand without hesitation. You challenged everything I believed about strength and weakness. You saw through my armor when everyone else just saw the difficult genius. And you stayed, even when I gave you every reason to leave. You were worth staying for, Rebecca said simply. I love you. The words came out clumsy, uncertain. I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't have a protocol for this. Rebecca laughed, a sound like music in the quiet corridor. There is no protocol, Vincent. That's the point. Love isn't an equation you solve. It's a risk you take. Then I'm taking it. He pulled her closer, his damaged hands trembling slightly as he cupped her face. I'm all in. Broken hands, uncertain future, and all. When their lips met, Vincent felt something shift in his chest, a variable he'd never accounted for, an answer that couldn't be calculated. This was what he'd been running from all those years. Not weakness, but the terrifying, exhilarating reality of connection, of being known, of mattering. They stood together in the corridor, two people who had both learned that strength comes not from standing alone, but from having the courage to stand together. Around them, the station hummed with life. Above them, stars burned with ancient light. And between them, something new was being born, fragile as a first breath, strong as survival itself. So what happens now? Rebecca asked, her forehead resting against his. Vincent smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. I don't know. And for the first time in my life, that doesn't terrify me. Good answer. Later, as Vincent returned to his quarters, he passed the rehabilitation center and saw his equations still on the whiteboard. They were elegant, complex, beautiful in their precision. But they were just numbers. Just symbols on a board. The real equation, the one that mattered, couldn't be written. It was measured in shared glances and quiet conversations, in the courage to ask for help and the grace to offer it, in a child's trust and a woman's steadfast belief that broken things could heal. Vincent had spent his life searching for universal truths in mathematics. But the greatest truth he'd learned couldn't be found in any formula. It was simple, terrifying, and absolutely essential. We are not meant to face the universe alone. The challenge he'd lost wasn't against an alien empire across the stars. It was against the walls he'd built within himself. And in losing, he'd found something infinitely more valuable than victory. He'd found his way home.